Hi, class. Welcome to chapters 16 and 17. Chapter 16, we're going to talk about managerial communication. Chapter 17, we're going to get into organizational planning and controlling. This, in my opinion, is the capstone of all of the content for principles of management because it gets you into more of the communication process now, and it also makes you think about organizing and controlling your company. With that said, let's get into chapter 16, managerial communication. My undergrad is in communication and I love communication. I was a speech guy, I was a debate guy. I really enjoyed all that. But two key factors was part of communication for me was encoding and decode. So when you're encoding, you are putting a lot of you can use the word coding in your message. What you're trying to say, what you're trying to convey. And something critical is understand your audience and know what you're trying to convey to them by encoding your message. It doesn't mean making secret codes. It just means putting something together, the style, the way you present yourself so that you are encoding. You're sending a message to the receiver. Decode is what your people on the other end that you're presenting to are trying to understand. They're decoding what you just told them. And this is all about communication and it's about listening. So managerial communication also involves feedback. Okay, but unfortunately it can be affected by noise. Okay, so noise affect the clarity of the actual message. So when I say noise, I am referring to when you're in class and you got your headphones on, or you got your laptop open, or you're on your phone, you're not going to understand what your professor is trying to express to you. That's why you'll hear them say, do me a favor, while I'm encoding to you, please turn off your headphones, close your laptops, and put away your cell phones, because I want you to be able to successfully decode what I'm telling you. Same thing in corporate America, same thing in your job. Every time someone talks to you, they are encoding a message or they're trying to send a message to you. But if you're busy and you got so many distractions, the word noise is considered a distraction. Noise doesn't mean actual an audible. It just means you're being distracted by something around you. It could be my window over here. Cars are going by. I look out and say, "Oh, there's a car going by." Or my window, which is right here, I can see people, staff members, and other faculty walking past my window. Those are the noise distractions that we're talking about, which affects the clarity of your message, of your communication. So we have several types of communication. We have oral, written, nonverbal. Now, the most powerful is oral. Most of the time, you're saying something, you are boisterous, you have a lot of energy, and people are being captured by what you're saying. I'm also a stand up comedian, I've been an actor, and I've had my own talk show. So I've got to be a very good oral communicator. Written communication is effective as well and very important. Written communication is what you're putting together in your emails. Let's say some of your, maybe you're writing a book, your essays in class. That's the written. And then here is the key, is the last one is nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is the things you don't say verbally. It's that, it's that look, it's the eyebrows, it's we're not saying it. We're just letting you know we disagree with what you're saying. We're not going to tell you. You're going to do like this maybe. When I lived in Japan for 6 years, they don't like to actually tell you verbally. They actually just give you a look like they have a little sound, which means no. I learned this, and it's very respectful. Whenever they want to say no, they'll go, which means they're thinking about it. They're thinking about it. So nonverbal communication is important. When I am lecturing and I see my students in the front row like this, I have an issue with that. That means you automatically are shutting off the communication channel by putting almost an X in front of you, telling me you don't want to hear what the lecture is about. I'm lecturing on business and finance. Those are two things that you need to know because in today's economy, if you don't know anything about finance, you're not going to be successful when you come to my level in terms of retirement level. So it's so important. Body language is important. The way you sit, the way you look. I think it's important to understand the cultural differences because that happened in a couple of chapters earlier. The cultural competency we talked about. Some people won't look you in the eye. Some people will look down at their feet. You ever notice people walking by looking at the sidewalk? That might be their culture, their upbringing. I'm from Brooklyn. We look up, around, and we do a 180. We do a 360 because we always are aware of our surroundings. That's what the body language is important to kind of read it. When you see people slouching, they may not be, not listening to you. That's just their posture. So, types of communication, you've got oral, you have written, nonverbal, and then the body language is super important. Read your colleagues, your peers, your coworkers, your students. That, let's say, nonverbal speaks louder than the verbal. So communication flow, we know there's upward flow, downward flow, and horizontal. Upward is you talking to your superiors. You're talking to the CEO or the president of the company or the president of the college, okay, or to your professor in class. Downward is I am the professor and I'm speaking to my students, basically letting them know how things are going to go throughout the semester, breaking down the syllabus. I may be talking about a lesson. That's the downward. I'm giving you information. And then horizontal means we're communicating with one another, left, right. For example, a lot of companies have a hierarchy of power, which means that pyramid. At the top is the CEO, president, vice president, etc. The horizontal or the flattened hierarchy means you actually are communicating to the person to the left of you, to the right of you. The CEO is probably sitting in the chair just to the right of you, and he wants to know how effective the company is running. Now, you may have some input. That's horizontal. And it's also affected, unfortunately, by the power, status, and skills. So you have upward, downward, and horizontal. So when you think of each one of those, they are affected by the status because there are times a student does not want to talk to the professor. Some professors are intimidating. Okay, you don't want to talk to the CEO or the president because you figure, oh, they're in a whole different realm. But if a company wants to run effectively and smoothly, they're going to hopefully try and do the horizontal in terms of the communication style. Corporate reputations. I love when we talk about this because we talk about the Enrons of the world. We talk about the Martha Stewarts of the world. We talk about WorldCom. All these folks have had a catastrophic experience in terms of the finance that they were actually supposedly entrusted with for their stakeholders, the shareholders, and so forth. So, identity versus reputation. The identity may be strong, but the reputation precedes the identity. Good example would be Enron. Enron was a multi-billion dollar corporation and they wanted to get bigger and stronger, but they wanted to get more people to believe in them. So, identity, wow, we are Enron. Reputation, we're going to create all these amazing accounts that really don't exist, but we're going to inflate our bottom line. So, in the stock market, you're saying these people have billions and billions of dollars just growing and growing. That wasn't the case. So, identity versus reputation is super, super important. All right. Here's something I love from my undergrad is communication shapes perceptions. I think it's important if you don't have a good communication style that you develop one. In business, you have to have a way to develop your own way of presenting. So when I say presenting that people can accept. I had a student in our fashion club, and he was selling these really cool little hats that he was making. They're like kitty cat hats. Great concept, something that's new. Students ate it up. But what I encouraged him to do was be more of a presenter because he would talk and he'd look down at his feet or he wouldn't look in the eyes of the people he's trying to sell the product to. And he didn't have a script of what he wanted. So communication was shaping the perception of his new company. And outside of about another maybe 2 or 3 weeks, he got the concept. And he says, oh, I get it. They have to believe in what I'm telling them so that they will actually allow me to sell them my product. That's it. That's the bottom line. So communication does shape perceptions. Managerial roles. We have a gatekeeper, liaison, and opinion leader. So the gatekeeper is the person that's supposed to keep the people out of the company that would like to do damage to the company. Or they do not want them to infiltrate the company because of one or many different reasons. Liaison is a person going to communicate with other companies, government entities, and so forth. This is the role of the managers. And then you have the opinion leader, the person who is trying to make sure they are the speaker of the company so that the coordination actually goes smoother. So, gatekeeper, liaison, and opinion manager. Those are all essential for coordination. Each person should know what the other is doing. We're now shifting gears and getting right into chapter 17, which is organizational planning and controlling. So planning sets goals and action. This is the planning stage. And it also reduces uncertainty and ambiguity. I had a class that we did a little ambiguity test, and a lot of students, it measures whether you can tolerate ambiguity. Ambiguity, of course, means that things are unclear, things are uncertain. You're not too sure what's going to happen in the next couple of minutes, the next couple of hours, the next couple of weeks. Ambiguity is not good for companies, and we talked about that. So that's part of the controlling and planning part of running a company. So the planning process, you're going to set goals. You're going to sit down and say, what do we want to do? How do we want to do it? And how effectively we're going to try to do it. Hopefully with the most precision and accuracy. We're going to set a forecast. I think there's always going to be benchmarks for every time you set a goal. Is it going to be a quarterly? Is it going to be annually? Is it going to be semi-annually? And then evaluation options. How do we evaluate what we put in place? Are we achieving the goals? Or have we achieved the goals? Or are the goals unachievable? That's the important part. Again, this is principles of management. So when you think of how you manage your team, your company, maybe even your own life, start with goals, forecast, and evaluation options. Evaluation options also means how are you going to do it? Are you going to do it monetarily, evaluate? Are you going to do it in terms of customer service? Or whatever your management tool would be, that's going to be your option for evaluating the company. All right. And then once you get all that put together, the planning process, now you can implement it. But here's the part that some people forget. They need to monitor it. You need to monitor it by going back to those benchmarks that you set forth. So if in 3 months you aren't reaching that monetary peak, okay, or you haven't seen the revenue, then you go back to the drawing board and you recreate those goals. You recreate the forecast and the timeline. The forecast is important too, because you're telling your company when you expect to see the revenue either increase, stay the same, but definitely not decrease. So types of plans. Types of plans are strategic, tactical, and operational. Strategic, you've got a strategy. You know what you're going to do. You're going to map it out. Here at Southwestern College, we have a strategic master plan for the college. It goes out to 2030. So we've envisioned what we'd like to do with the college based on the growth of our student population, I should say, based on the growth of the monetary value coming from the federal and state, officials. And then we think tactfully. How are we going to do this? What are we going to move around? Which buildings do we knock down? Which factory do we move around? So forth and so on. And then operational. How are we going to actually be able to still function after we put all these things into play? This also includes your contingency plan. So if some things don't work strategically, tactically, or operationally, you have to have a backup plan, a contingency. What will you do in the what if situation? Goal setting. In every one of my classes, I have a goal setting assignment because I want students to realistically write down what they'd like to do in terms of achieving their goals. It could be monetary, it could be fitness, it could be a better walk with Jesus, whatever your faith is. It could be, let's say, a better relationship with your wife, your parents, in laws. Goal setting. So be very specific, okay, and make it challenging goals. For example, I'd like to lose weight. Okay, very specific. How much, Kale? 50 pounds. Wow, that's a lot. In a year. Woo, that realistic? Not too sure. But that's a personal goal. Okay? But goal setting is supposed to be specific and challenging. All right? And then you have to have improved performance. What is the measurement? What's the matrix that you're actually setting forth to say, I've got improved performance? That's either monetary, okay, or physical, if I want to lose the weight. And I got to have some realistic timelines. In the control sector, the control system itself, you've got to monitor the performance. Okay, and then you take corrective actions. For me, I better get back to the gym, or I better walk more, reduce sugar intake. So all these things, but this is me physically. If you go back monetarily, then you monitor the performance of your stock, your bonds, okay, or what you're doing for your actual company, and find out, are we going in the right direction? And if not, you take what? Corrective action. Control process also, you set standard measurements. How are you going to measure the, let's say, the amount of progress or lack of progress, and then you compare that and you make the adjustments. You compare where you are and where you want to be, and if you are not where you want to be or head towards, that's when you do that comparative analysis and you start making adjustments. Management by objectives, MBO. So we're going to have the goal setting and feedback. We need to know how we are doing. Are we doing substantially well? Are we doing moderate? And also, you got to understand, what do you want? Do you just want a slight improvement, or do you want to do a 180? That's important as well. So it's going to improve motivation and performance. If the company is starting to be more of a healthy company financially, then the students, sorry, the employees and the students in some cases will feel more comfortable that the company is going to be sustaining itself and you have a hopefully a strong chance of being with the company as long as they're going to be alive. So MBO, which is management by observation, you're observing, okay, and you're making objectives. So, planning process. And let me go back and make sure I didn't skip too far ahead. Nope, no, we're fine. I'm sorry, planning approaches. You have control oriented versus involvement oriented, and different roles for different employees. So, control oriented, I got to be in control. I've got to be not a micromanager, but I have to make sure that it is going the right direction. So, I'm going to be, behind the scenes watching things. Okay, versus involvement control. I'm not going to physically be in there, but I'm going to be behind the scenes as an overseer. So different roles for different employees. I've had employees that I just trust with basically my life. And I had other employees that I didn't really trust to even, let's say, flush the toilet. In other words, you are the manager, you are the boss, you're the CEO. You determine how much control you need to have and how much planning, okay, and goal setting you need to put together for your company. With that said, folks, that wraps up those chapters, and that actually brings us to the end of this semester. Appreciate your time. If you have any questions, look online for my syllabus, look online for my office hours, look online for anything you have, and I'm available to you based on the office hours. Thank you, folks.